All right, recording is in progress now.
All right, good morning. I'd like to call the St. Louis County Workforce Development Board meeting for May 25th, 2022 to order. Good morning, all. And Loris, would you like to take a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Brad Eckman.
Good morning, President.
Jason Archer.
Present.
Caroline Battles.
Good morning, here.
Senia Bosman.
Present.
John Bowman.
Good morning, President.
John Gall. Mary Grott.
Present.
Elliot Henry. Quintinus Henry. Jeff Mazer. Lee Metcalf.
Present.
Lydia Mitchell.
Present.
Gwen Mizell.
Present.
Mary Moriarty.
Good morning.
Vanessa Parker Lewis.
Present.
Reginald Scott.
Present.
Carolyn Seward.
Present.
Melissa Wolkamp.
Present.
Mr. Chair, that concludes the roll call, and we do have a quorum.
Great, thank you. The next order of business would be the approval of the previous minutes from February 23rd, 2022. They were in your packet, and then with the new posting, of course, they were posted online. If I'm asking for any edits, changes, if there are none, I would accept a motion to approve the previous minutes.
Motion to approve. Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the previous minutes. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Seeing none. Next order of business is a welcome from Director Howard Hayes has joined us this morning, and I'd like to allow him to address the board. Director Hayes, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Members, I'd like to bring to your attention that this chairman you elected was featured in the Labor Tribune, an excellent article. Talked about his background as an executive as well as in the labor movement. I'd also like to say that he has additional skills with Dr. Page, Chairman Days, Chairperson Days, and Vice Chair Webb. We cleaned up for about 3 hours in the 4th council district, and he knows his way around neighborhood relations, and I want to thank him for that. The other item is, you may know by now that our executive director, Greg Laposa, is no longer interim president of Team Training and Employment Administrators of Missouri. That is one of the most dynamic agencies in the state of Missouri in terms of workforce and training. And he now leads that organization. And I'd like to say for us, we are focused on big issues for you. We're supporting the MET and the announcement of the ARPA funds. We have also joined, I'm on the board of Homegrown St. Louis, which is focused on turning the lives around for thousands of young Black men in the region in terms of education, jobs, training, mentoring, that type thing. I recently was elected to the Construction Forum Board. Made a presentation at the AGC for minority businesses in the construction field, and that's important because minority businesses hire workers that can contribute to this region and this county. What I'd like to do, though, just briefly, Dr. Manning, Lois Williams, there are frontline soldiers in terms of what we do on a day-to-day basis, and their jobs are hard. And I just want to commend them in front of our leadership for the work that they do. Also, as you know, our region, we face similar challenges to regions our size: inconsistent population growth, which is slower than many of our peers, difficulty attracting and retaining higher educated workers. But I spoke with Dr. Page on a new innovative initiative that we will probably bring to your attention in the very near future. Have to solve some of these long-term systemic problems if this region is to grow. Again, we want to just thank you for your leadership. We couldn't do this without you. If you look at top priorities for our working families, health and safety, but right below that, education, jobs, and training. And because of you, we can provide those services. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Director. The next order of business would be board chair remarks. And this will be my first time ever to make remarks in front of this board. I am nervous, so I will freely admit to that. I don't mind talking. Many of you know that, so I'm not shy to speaking, but I do get nervous. I'd like to thank everyone for me becoming chair, and I'm honored to serve as the chair of this board. I respect what we do, and I think we do excellent work, and I'm looking forward to being the chair. One of the first things I said I wanted to do was meet with everyone for 30 minutes just to get to know each other a little bit as we move forward. I believe with the help of Greg and Loris was the scheduler. It took a lot of work to get that done, so thank you, Loris. I believe I've met with everyone but one or two. It was just a great conversation. I just want to thank every single person on here that dedicates their time to give to the board, give to the community. I think you're even going to see something we've done. The next item of business, we lumped votes together just to move the meetings in a different order. So we've already started moving forward in some of the suggestions that we had from these conversations. Greg, I think you did even like a summary of some of the highlights from some of the conversations that we held. So I don't know if you guys can see some of this, but it's things like we think we're doing well. We'd like to see more opportunities for member engagement. We're going to work on how to get more training, education, so that when we hear these reports, we understand kind of the impact to the individual that these programs do, not just from a conceptual standpoint. I asked each of you if there was something specifically you wanted to learn and know more in depth. So I think that was important feedback to get. Yeah, I'm not really going to read these next. We're going to go to the next slide. Insights on strategies. One of the current trend, or one of the big trends that we're going to hear a lot about, is work-based learning opportunities and apprenticeship training. The federal, the state that fund us are really find those impactful programs. So we're going to be doing more about that. And I'd like to make it so that we all understand a little bit more of what that means. One of the interesting feedback was connect to other boards. I'd like to make sure that we as a board are performing well. And I also like to know how other boards are performing. So it was interesting. We're going to try to look in to see how if we can invite other WIB board guests, whether it's an executive director or another chair, and kind of have them observe us and give us feedback on what we're doing and how they do. Aligning our strategies, what Director Hayes just said, we have these problems that we need to address and issues that have been identified, and how can we better align our strategies to address those? So a little bit more coordination, or at least be more conscious of the coordination. We want to ensure equity, diversity, and inclusion in all that we do. We want to focus and include the populations that need and require our services. We want to ensure that we have a little bit better data visualization tools for those of us on the board, so that we don't meet a lot, but when we do it, we do impactful work, and we need to be able to step away and be able to describe to other coworkers and others in our community what we do and our impact on the board. We still need to continue to focus on family sustaining wages and intergenerational poverty. The other thing is to consider how best to get out our services and make contact and communication to those that need us. I think that's an ongoing issue that we're going to take on and wrestle a little bit better. So really that concludes my report. And I'm going to finish it again with a thank you for allowing me to be the chair of this board. I'm honored. So I look forward to the work that we're going to be doing. Thanks, Greg.
Well, thank you, Jason. I know we're all happy to have you in this role, and I was a participant in many of those, or all of, I think mostly all of them. There was one or two that I may have missed, these listening sessions, and I think, Jason hit the highlights. We have extensive notes on those conversations, and so we'll be using that to shape and influence our strategic direction as a board, and from a program standpoint as well, as we move into the next program year. So again, I think it was a valuable use of Jason's first 90 or so days in the new role as chair of the board. And again, appreciate everyone making the time, and appreciate those of you on the call today who are joining us from various locations throughout our country. Appreciate your commitment to the board, and doing that. So for the sake of making sure that we can vote on items that are critical business items today, and because we currently have a quorum, we're going to move beyond some of the initial points that I would share typically in the director's report, to just the voting items first, and then we'll go back to the director's report. But I'm going to move to discussing items requiring a vote, which begins with a discussion of our bylaws. As you all know, we've been giving you updates at previous board meetings on our bylaws, and the process of having those reviewed both by board members as well as our county counselor's office. Appreciate the county counselor's office and their support, as well as members who submitted ideas, revisions, changes, and Loris Williams, who helped organize everything. I'm going to turn it over to Loris for a moment to kind of give a recap for the board, just on where there were revisions made before we take a motion to approve the bylaws. You should have had the bylaws, by the way, the final version in your board packet if you had a chance to look at that. But I think it's important just to recap the key areas that were modified from the last draft you saw to now. So with that, Loris, if you're prepared to give us kind of a recap of some of the revisions that were made.
Yes, sir. So you may have noticed that in the Article 1 is the officers, and it outlines the duties and roles and responsibilities for the officers that are required. So the chair, the vice chair, and so on. We added more information about what the qualifications are, specifically for the board chair and the vice chair. They have to be representatives from the business community. So we added that, but we also added exactly what those positions are supposed to do and how they interact with the staff. So, how the treasurer interacts with the staff and what responsibilities go with that position, the secretary, and so on. So we made some significant changes there. We added a completely new article in the membership piece, and that piece establishes the governing laws for what the membership of the board are required to do, how the membership works, how you become a member, what your voting responsibility, your participation, term limits and all that kind of stuff. As you all may recall, previously in our bylaws, the term limits were very vague. It was from appointment to death or resignation. So and the state came back and said, no, you have to actually set term limits. So we did actually set the term limits. Those term limits were really the brainchild of our executive finance committee. They came up with an outline that I think is really spectacular. So please make sure you take a look at that if you haven't already. Hopefully you all have already. Then Article 3 is now the committees. And again, it gives the committees more substance, just kind of outlines exactly what those committees are supposed to be doing. So the most significant difference is the change of the Career Pathways Committee from just the Career Pathways Committee to the Employer Engagement and Career Pathways Committee, which just kind of outlines more of the role that they will play with our business services group and how that's going to work. So that's a big change. Then we went to the board meetings and the procedures. So exactly how we're supposed to operate within the board and within these meetings. Article 5 is the bylaws amendment and what it takes to amend these bylaws. And then Article 6 is the conflict of interest. So we have been operating according to the bylaws that were in place since 2016. So the first read, you all may recall, of the bylaws took place in December, January. And then from there, we took the feedback, we incorporated that feedback, we got feedback from the state and then our county counselor's office. And I think that Mac Callanan is still on the call. Mac is our representative in the county counselor's office. And Mac did an outstanding job of making sure that everything was clear, that the statutes that governed our bylaws were all in place, that they're cited in the bylaws so people know how to go back and refer to the federal regs or the state regs or the county regs to make sure that we are all in compliance. So I think that we have a very solid document. I really truly want to thank Mac for all of his hard work in getting this done. There were a lot of back and forth emails and a lot of hand wringing and head tossing and all that trying to get it done. But I think we have a very solid document. So those are the biggest changes that were made.
Thank you, Loris. And Mac, is there anything you want to add to that? Not trying to put you on the spot. No worries if you got nothing to add. Just want to make sure we give you an opportunity to say anything and make sure the board gets to see who was so instrumental in assisting us. It doesn't sound like you want to say anything. So thanks, Mac, again for your support, though, through this process. Is there any discussion or questions about what Loris presented from board members?
Greg, just a quick question, Gwen Mizell. So as it relates to existing board members that have been on for, obviously more than 2 years, as we set the term limits, what does that mean for the existing board members?
Yeah, that's a great question. Loris, do you have any thoughts on that? I have a thought, but I want to defer to Loris for a moment if she has any comments on that.
To my understanding, Greg, and I think what we talked about before was that existing members would be grandfathered in. So since these term limits were not in effect in the previous bylaws, they would become in effect when these bylaws are ratified. So that's my understanding. So if you've already been on the board for a number of years, your term limits start now, not what you did before.
Yeah, and I would say too, Gwen, so the current board was certified by the state of Missouri. We had to do a board recertification process this past year. And so I think it makes most sense, to Loris's point, that everyone begins a 2-year term effective July 1. That's, upon approval of our bylaws. But I would say that all the existing members could continue and serve their first 2-year term effective July 1. Now, I will also say that if there's any member who, though, decides that at this point in time they want to reconsider, being a board member, we love having all of you. So we don't want anyone to leave, and we're currently trying to fill a couple vacancies. But if anyone decides at this juncture that they're trying to juggle some other things, and maybe it makes sense for you to transition, you can always notify staff. But again, I'm not trying to put that out there to suggest that we need anyone to leave the board at this time. But it is so you're more or less committing to a 2-year term. Of course, understand when vacancies need to happen, they happen, and there's procedures in place in our bylaws for filling vacancies. But we would begin a 2-year term, as Loris noted, for all existing members.
Great. Thanks, Greg and Loris. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or discussion? Remember that our bylaws can always be amended too. So these are, when we vote to adopt these are our final version for now. But as we go through the course of the year and you have thoughts on ways to improve our procedures, the governing rules for our board, please don't ever hesitate to share thoughts, and we can always consider making amendments to our bylaws. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the chair. Jason, if you'd like to ask for a motion.
Yes, this one does require a roll call vote of the members. So we'd like to entertain a motion and a second to accept the bylaws.
So moved, Mr. Chair. This is Senia Bosman.
This is Lee. I second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Loris, would you please take a roll call?
Yes, sir. Brad Eckman,
Aye.
Jason Archer,
Yes.
Caroline Battles,
Aye.
Senia Bosman,
Yes.
John Bowman,
Yes.
Mary Grott,
Yes.
Jeff Mazer,
Yes.
Lee Metcalf,
Yes.
Lydia Mitchell,
Yes.
Gwen Mizell,
Yes.
Mary Moriarty, Vanessa Parker Lewis,
Yes.
Reginald Scott,
Yes.
Carolyn Seward,
Yes.
Melissa Wolkamp.
Yes.
Vote is complete and unanimous, Mr. Chair. It is passed.
Thank you. Greg, I'll turn this back over to you and Dr. Manning. The next item that requires a vote is the local plan update.
Thank you. So as you all know, the St. Louis County Workforce Development Board, like all local regions, is required to operate with a local plan. Our last local plan was put into place effectively in 2020. And now we're at the point of making some modifications that requires board approval. And ultimately, these modifications will be they've already been shared as draft with the state. So the final approved versions that we approved today will be shared with the state of Missouri. And we've also put the local plan modifications out for public comment, and that was 14 days ago. And so we've looked for any public comments, have not received any public comments on our local plan modifications. But I'm going to have Dr. Manning go through some of the modifications that we made, or just to kind of give us an overview of the local plan modifications, what that process really means for us. And then we can look to take a vote on approving these modifications. So with that, Dr. Manning, are you with us?
I am, Greg. Good morning, everyone. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Okay.
you.
Good morning. Yes,
Okay.
we can.
Yeah.
Okay, fabulous. Okay, so in the wording in your package, you'll see how it's laid out. Up until 2 years ago, we were required to do a local plan every 4 years. With new guidance came the need or the requirement to modify our local plan every 2 years. And so what that local modification entails is updating that labor market information, and that workforce and economic evaluation information. And it paints a picture earlier than used to be that 4-year mark. So now we get to go in every 2 years and paint the picture for our workforce development region. And when I say paint the picture, this is a very detailed report, and I implore everyone to go online and take a look at this modification. It shows us what job openings now are high growth and things of that nature. It shows us, what parts of workforce that are hurting, that we need to pay attention to. And it also gives us our targeted areas that we need to focus on. And so it's some very good information. And again, we update it every 2 years now, which is great. We used to only do it every 4. But I believe we all can agree that, our economic and workforce situation changes a lot quicker than every 4 years. So kudos to the state for that. That implementing this 2-year modification is a great deal. We also updated out-of-school youth provider information for our region, and in-school youth provider information for our region, because we're offering a lot more things that we did not offer before. And we also updated details for our sub-recipients as their organizations grow. The information we offer to highlight what we do in our region should grow as well. And so those are the particular areas that we updated. Again, it was labor market information, workforce analysis, and economic analysis, along with out-of-school youth and in-school youth provider information. Does anyone have any questions about that? Again, guys, I want to implore you to go online, take a look at some of these modifications, or all of the modifications, because it does give a vivid picture of where our workforce development region stands statistically right now, highlights those areas that we should be targeting, our target population areas and things like that. It just gives us an idea of what direction we should be going in for ideal growth for our region. With that, I'll turn it back over to you, Director Raposa. And if Lois wants to speak on the MOU and accompanying IFA, that accompanies the MOU and IFA, guys, the Memorandum of Understanding and Infrastructure Agreement will always accompany the local plan modifications, because any modifications made in a local plan or the MOU would need to be voted on. And these both accompany one another. Lois, did you want to mention anything on the MOU and the IFA?
Yes, ma'am. I'll take that piece.
Thank you.
So, thank you. The MOU is the Memorandum of Understanding. There are 19 required Wioa partners. They include like Voc Rehab, which Lydia is familiar with. They include Youth Build, Job Corps, our Title I service providers, our AEL, which Mary, of course, is familiar with, block grants and different things like that. So we have 19 different partners that we are required by Wioa to partner with, and they are also required by Wioa to partner with us. So every time we do this, We outline what services the job center will be offering. It covers how those services are funded. So some of our partners, they agreed to do in-kind kind of contributions to the overall one-stop delivery system. That may be doing workshops or putting on presentations. That may be cash. It just depends. But every 2 to 3 years, we have to go through and renegotiate this. Every partner has to agree to it. They have to sign off on it. It has to be signed off on by the county executive, who is our Cleo, the chief local elected official. And so it's really kind of a big thing, takes a lot of organization and negotiation and all that kind of stuff, but it's done. Our partners have been great. We are about 95% signed. I have a couple other agencies that I'm waiting on. They had to have board meetings and different things like that to get it signed, but we are almost there. We should have that done within the next 2 weeks. So it is a part of the local plan, as Dr. Manning stated. It's a pretty big deal. So when you go on to read the local plan, please take a look at the MOU and the accompanying infrastructure cost sharing agreement.
Thank you.
Are there any-
Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
I'm sorry. I was just gonna ask if there was any questions about that. I know I kind of buzzed through it pretty quickly. If there are no questions, I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Laposa.
All right, thank you, Loris, and thank you, Dr. Manning. It's a big task to update our local plan, to produce the local plan, and then to update our MOU and IFA agreement. All very necessary compliance-related measures, but also these documents are really critical to the work that we do. The local plan is really, again, our driving strategy, and having up-to-date labor market, workforce, economic information allows us to operate from a closer picture of what our local area requires of us from a workforce development team, and then making sure that we update any new programs, provisions that we have is always important. But the MOU and IFA agreement is really important for our partnerships, and that was one of the themes that we heard from our listening sessions when Jason and I were talking to board members, is an interest and a desire to learn more about how we're working with our partners, not just our service providers, but our WIOA required partners, and what that's producing. How are we making referrals intentionally to some of these organizations? How are we leveraging the fact that they've agreed to certain services that contribute to our one-stop center? And Deborah Stovall, our one-stop operator, is regularly sending out information to our WIOA required partners and receiving information from them too, as it is shared, related to various ways that we can better serve customers through the variety of services that we offer. So I think as we move forward, we're going to make sure that we do a more intentional job of sharing how those partnerships are working and what it's producing, how we're leveraging those relationships. But that is, again, a big task. And as Loris noted, you have to get commitments, signatures from these different partners. So all good work, and again, makes our operations stronger because we're leveraging existing assets that we have in these partnerships, and making sure that we have the most up-to-date local plan to drive our efforts. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair, unless there's any questions. I think Loris already invited those questions, but if there's any additional questions, happy to take them. Otherwise, we can go to a motion.
Thank you. Yes, this one requires a motion, a second, and a roll call vote to implement by the board. So if someone would like to make that motion and second.
So moved. Gwen Mizell.
Second, Carolyn.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Loris, would you please take a roll call?
Yes, sir, I will. Brad Eckman,
Aye.
Jason Archer,
Aye.
Caroline Battles,
Aye.
Senia Bosman,
Yes.
John Bowman,
Yes.
Mary Grott,
Yes.
Jeff Mazer,
Yes.
Lee Metcalf,
Yes.
Lydia Mitchell,
Yes.
Gwen Mizell,
Yes.
Mary Moriarty,
Yes.
Vanessa Parker Lewis,
Yes.
Reginald Scott,
Yes.
Carolyn Seward,
Yes.
Alyssa Wolkamp.
I abstain from the vote.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, the motion passes.
Thank you. The next one that requires a vote, Greg, you want to present this one, the Wioa annual agreement?
Yes. And I did want to say, I forgot to note, Dr. Manning and Loris referenced it, but in your board packet, in the read ahead memo, there's a link to where the local plan with the MOU IFA agreement is posted. So just to, in case you hadn't had a chance to see that particular briefing, that memo, it's in your board packet. So again, would advise that everyone take a look at that. But I will move on to annual agreements. So the annual agreement is an annual regular agreement that we receive from the state of Missouri. It's essentially a contract between us and the state of Missouri to more or less be authorized to operate WIOA programming. So the annual agreement includes stipulations for St. Louis County's Workforce Development Board, and a number of these are obligations. So in recent years, something that's been added to the annual agreements is a requirement to meet certain WIOA enrollment targets, as well as Wagner-Peiser targets. We've received additional obligations to make sure that our chief elected officer attends at least one board meeting, as well as one of our CLEO summit, the chief elected officer summit, to receive updates on policies and other guidance as necessary. And then there's various submission requirements that we have to provide to the state as part of the conditions of the annual agreement. This includes, updating or sharing information about our financial policies, as well as a sustainability plan that includes our subrecipient sustainability plans. In the past, we've talked about our sustainability plans before, but really it's in essence a document that outlines, our strategies for continuing operations in the event of disruptions to those operations, which could include staff turnover, could include a reduction in funds potentially. And it's really meant to urge the board to have a proactive approach to anticipating what challenges might emerge. And as we saw in 2020, from 2019 going into 2020, not many of us could have anticipated the effects of a global pandemic on how we would operate our services. And so I think as we move forward, we want to continue, different challenges that might emerge. And as we look at the economy today, even possibility of a potential economic downturn at some point, looking at how we're responding to the challenges that we face. So the sustainability plan is a key submission requirement of that as well. But really what we're asking you to support today is simply the agreement itself and authorizing the board staff to execute that agreement. Upon execution of that agreement, then we also receive the allocations that the board would ultimately approve to receive to fund the programs that we operate for adult, dislocated worker, and our youth programs. We received preliminary information, proposed allocations for St. Louis County, but we haven't received formal guidance yet or formal notification of those awards. So once we approve the annual agreement and send that in, we should expect that in the upcoming weeks, we would be formally notified of our allocations. And then we would proceed again at the next board meeting to take a vote on receiving those allocations. So this is not, you're not agreeing today to receive funding. You're agreeing to the conditions and the terms of the annual agreement. And again, the requirements that the board is obligated to conduct in response to signing the annual agreement. You all have seen the annual agreement before. If you've been on the board for a while, again, we do this every year. A copy of it was provided in your board packet. Are there any questions or concerns about the annual agreement or its purpose?
I just want to make it clear, Greg. So my question is, this is the agreement that lays out the guidelines prior to us doing the vote for the receipt of funds, correct? So there's no funding amounts in this vote.
You're right. That's correct. We're not approving any financial allocations that come with this. We're more or less agreeing to the general conditions that a local workforce development board must adhere to in agreement with the state's required parameters. And then those funds come at a different date. And remember, this goes through the county council, St. Louis County Council as well. So when we receive those funds will also have to be approved by the county council in addition to this board at a later date. I should note too that one thing that was introduced related to this annual agreement this year in the county council was a condition that the county council authorizes us to have the flexibility in subsequent years of being able to execute this agreement without going before the county council every time. And that was something that was done in collaboration, Loris, in collaboration with the county councilor's office, looked at a way of making sure that we can, in a more timely manner, get our annual agreement signed. Now, of course, the board still needs to always approve our annual agreement, but the fact that we don't need the county council to necessarily go through a 6 to 8 week legislative process to allow us to do what we do on an annual basis that's necessary to receive funds anyway is progress in terms of streamlining some of our processes. So appreciate the work that was done with Loris and the county councilor's office on that. But that was something that I failed to mention when I brought this up. But it will be a new thing moving forward for us.
Does anyone have any additional questions for Greg on this? If there are none, this requires a motion and a second and a roll call vote for this one as well.
So
moved, Mr. Chairman. This is Jeff Mazer.
I second. This is Carolyn.
Thank you. I think we have a motion and a second. Loris, would you please take roll?
Sir, I'm going to go through this kind of quickly. Brad Ackman,
Aye.
Jason Archer,
Aye.
Caroline Battles,
Aye.
Senior Bosman,
Yes.
John Bowman,
Yes.
Mary Grott,
Yes.
Jeff Mazer,
Yes.
Lee Metcalf,
Yes.
Lydia Mitchell,
Yes.
Gwen Mizell,
Yes.
Mary Moriarty,
Abstain.
Vanessa Parker Lewis,
Agree. Yes.
Reginald Scott,
Yes.
Carolyn Seward,
Yes.
Melissa Wocamp.
Yes.
The motion passes, sir.
Thank you. Okay, so now that is our lump of items requiring a vote. So now we'll go into our reports. I'll turn it over to Greg. He can kind of guide us through the reports and then interject additional comments from his remarks as they fit into those.
Thank you. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, board members, for your votes. and allowing us to move these items forward. The next thing I just want to kind of touch on real quick before we move into the FSIS reports, our fiscal reports, is just to kind of build on some of what Howard was touching on and Jason was touching on at the beginning of the call. In that, we're getting feedback from our board members and the community about where our services can be more effectively deployed. I think that, when you look at the current, it's always important for us to kind of check ourselves against the existing labor market conditions and economic circumstances. And some of what we heard in the board listening sessions was that members were interested in how we're responding to some of these realities, right? So I'm going to just touch on a couple ways that we're responding to some of the local issues that we're seeing that are also happen to be national issues as well, and invite thoughts from board members on kind of our strategy. But just wanted to lay out a couple realities that we're looking at from an economic standpoint right now. And this is, again, the context in which we, as our local workforce development board, operate. So as of, March of 2022, we are at 3.5% unemployment, and many would say that the economy continues to look good, although there have been some concerns expressed by economists that there's potentially a downturn on the horizon. Of course, we don't always know for sure, how the economy is going to play out. I think this economy's done some unique things that folks wouldn't have initially anticipated. But generally, I think individuals would think that the economy looks strong. And at the same time, we see that there's still plenty of individuals who are coming into our job center who are unemployed, underemployed, and looking for their next opportunity. So that general number, when we say 3.5% unemployment, it doesn't always tell us the full picture of where our services are needed and how greatly needed our services actually are. Just last week, for instance, looking at some of our breeder reports at the crossings, and these are kiosks that when visitors to the job center come in, they input their data, their information. I think 50% of the individuals at the crossings were coming into the job center to file for unemployment, to complete their unemployment claim, or to prove identity and do other process pieces related to unemployment insurance. And so that was 96 visitors last week who had that need. And then our goal is to make sure that that claim is processed, but then also to make sure that they're aware of the different job center services that are offered to assist them in reemployment. We know that the living wage is what's required of a living wage has increased over time. I think the last time I presented information to this board about the living wage, the MIT calculator, which we look at for calculations around living wage, said that the living wage for St. Louis County was $14 for an individual, for a single individual. And now that's up to $16.73. And to Jason's earlier point about family sustaining wages, if you have children, that wage is even greater. So our task is really to think about how do we create pathways to good quality jobs with benefits that allow individuals to not only provide for themselves and accumulate wealth, build wealth, but also to provide for their family. And so we have to take a close look at our training programs, where folks are getting their credentials, and what employment prospects that's leading to, and making sure that we continue to also double down on the effort that we have underway with our Employer Engagement and Career Pathways Committee to really be intentional about helping folks on a path to, again, quality jobs with good wages. We're also operating at a time of inflation, and we all know this. We hear in the news every day. But food prices are up significantly, as well as energy prices. And then a recent report, just something else to consider, a recent report that was shared by the Greater St. Louis Community Foundation showed that 15% of St. Louis County households do not have access to high-speed internet. So we've talked in the past about our digital divide, and we need to make sure that more individuals have the opportunity to gain digital skills. But when you look at even just being able to, obtain basic services, to submit job applications online, to conduct job searches online, to participate in virtual interviews, we still have work to do in the community to make sure that basic infrastructure is available to all of our residents. But it again points to why our job center is important, because our job center does provide opportunities for folks to come in and do job searches, and to use internet to be able to complete some of the essential requirements for them to receive benefits and then to get on that path to employment opportunities. So just wanted to offer that. There's a lot of work underway. I'm just highlighting two areas that we have a significant number of training enrollments in currently, just so that you can see why that might be important. And this is really kind of getting at the question of how are we responding? How is the St. Louis County Workforce Development Board responding to some of the local needs that we see? If you've been looking at the news or or are tuned to the healthcare space, you know that there's been significant turnover in healthcare organizations over the last couple of years, especially nurses, but even other frontline healthcare workers. The pandemic had an effect of driving some away from the profession, causing burnout. We have a number of partnerships with organizations like Washington University and the Special School District that are helping us to address the very real need for health workers in this economy. And so we've since 2020 built out a pretty successful incumbent worker training where Washington University is working to build its own talent base from within, as well as continue to operate their medical assistant apprenticeship program as well. And so these are medical assistants are really critical to oftentimes the first some of the first individuals that a patient meets when they come into a hospital or into a doctor's office to help to provide administrative support to doctors and physicians to assess the needs of those patients. And so we have robust efforts underway there. And then part of the supply chain, or part of the inflation issue, is tied to supply chain issues, right? So when you look at material moving and getting supplies into stores, and the great need that our region has, as well as many regions have across this country for truck drivers, we see that need, and we have a significant number of people who are enrolling in our training programs, graduating with CDL licenses, and able to find gainful employment in that sector and that industry where there's such a high need. We've been approached by Bi-State and other partners who are looking to create more of a direct talent pipeline from some of our CDL truck driving programs, driver programs, to jobs that are hard to fill right now and that are in great need. When you look at Bi-State in particular and Metro stops, the wait times have gone up for individuals who are using our Metro system because of the lack of drivers in some cases. And so, and that, as we all know, is a workforce issue too. Transportation. If folks, are having limitations in getting to work, that's a problem. So helping to get more drivers on the streets and into these roles helps us to address that transportation issue as a workforce issue, and also helps us to contribute to the larger regional issue around supply chain disruptions. So these are two areas. Again, there's more work going on across the variety of programs that we offer. But these are two that I just wanted to kind of spotlight for a second, because I think they're relevant for looking at what you've been hearing about in the news, and the issues that we discussed. Any questions about these areas, or what I just shared about the local economic data? The last thing I just wanted to touch on before we move over to the fiscal reports is just some other things that are underway that I think are important to flag for now. One is that we've participated, and we continue to participate in a number of grant opportunities that are being provided through federal government. We're kind of in a historic period of time where there's a lot more money coming through the Department of Labor for special grants, discretionary grants. We were part of a Good Jobs Challenge, which was an effort to improve quality jobs, particularly aligned to the bioscience, biomedical, and healthcare value chain, is kind of how that organization, that BioSTL, was a lead kind of coordinator of that effort. But for the first time that I can recall, and many of my colleagues in our St. Louis regional workforce system can recall, partners in the workforce system were really intentionally engaged. St. Louis County was engaged, and one of our subrecipients, FWCA, also had a role to play in that Good Jobs Challenge. And that was an opportunity where workforce boards were included. And again, that's important because a lot of folks forget about the workforce boards, and they don't really know how to collaborate with the local workforce development board. We all have much greater understanding because we participate in these meetings and we get the information, but the community awareness about the value of the workforce system, public workforce system, is there's a lot to be desired there. But I was included in those conversations, as well as a colleague from Madison County and our regional directors across St. Louis were included in that Good Jobs Challenge. We're waiting to find out in June whether or not we're going to be the recipient of funding. That would be something that our board would have to approve, but we are part of the application and the proposal. And we're hoping that St. Louis has a very competitive application for the Good Jobs Challenge. And then more recently, just a month or two ago, there was also an effort that was led by our partners on the Illinois side in Madison County to grow the healthcare apprenticeships in the St. Louis metropolitan area. Madison County's Workforce Development Board extended an invitation to me and other Missouri boards to participate in that effort, and we would also receive funding if that proposal is successful, to have an apprenticeship navigator or two navigators on site within St. Louis County to help steer people and coach people into healthcare apprenticeship opportunities that are aligned to that proposal. So I just wanted you to know that we're seeking not just we're primarily funded by our Wioa formula allocation every year, but we've heard from board members and others that we have to really think about how we're diversifying our funding streams, and also how we're tied to regional efforts. And I think that you're seeing an increase in regionalism, to Jason's earlier point about wanting to partner with our city workforce board and other workforce boards. That is something that is happening probably more than it ever has. And I think that's good for our region, and it's good for St. Louis County as well. So those efforts are underway. We're tying ourselves to other regional efforts like the St. Louis Anchor Action Network, which is an effort that's really focused on addressing issues around equity and racial disparities and employment outcomes. It consists of a number of employers across key institutions that we all know well in St. Louis, the St. Louis Zoo, the St. Louis Science Center, as well as higher education institutions like Washington University, University of Missouri, St. Louis, and then big financial service providers, as well as healthcare providers. Edward Jones and SSM and BJC are all a part of this St. Louis Anchor Action Network initiative. And they've committed to providing jobs and doing more intentional recruitment of individuals who live in certain zip codes that have been historically underinvested in and marginalized through policy and decisions. And so they're targeting a number of those zip codes are in the St. Louis County area, particularly concentrated in North County. And so we're a part of the effort to try to get the folks that we see who come into our job center connected to those job opportunities that are provided by the members of that group. And so it's still a relatively early initiative and developing initiative. We helped to support a job fair back in December of this past year and early part of the year, provided some assistance to candidates in developing their resume and preparation for the jobs that were presented. But I think this is something that we're going to, lean into even more as we move forward. And finally, we're looking at better leveraging a tool that we have called Talify. This is a tool that currently the state of Missouri is funding for us, but it allows us to help job seekers to gain a more intentional picture of their skill set as well as their personality traits that would make them a good fit for certain employers. So we're trying to reduce the friction between the employers who have great job opportunities and job seekers maybe not having the skills or maybe not being the best fit for those opportunities. We know that, there's plenty of folks looking for work. And then meanwhile, we still hear employers telling us they can't find the talent they need. And so part of that's looking at, how are we looking more at talent pipeline development? But a key part of that is the assessments that we provide to our customers to help them position themselves well for these jobs, right? So the Talify assessment is something that, again, we've had available to us in St. Louis County for a number of years now. We're trying a pilot effort right now with our business services group, as well as in June, we'll be working with our case managers of our subrecipients and co-located partners to receive kind of a refresher on how to utilize the Talify assessment to coach individuals and helping them to really develop the self-awareness necessary so that they know what their skills, abilities, and talents are and how it's uniquely aligned to employment opportunities. And then likewise, our employers can use Talify to directly recruit talent. So we had our first training just a couple weeks ago with, again, some of our business services team members, and we'll be doing additional training with case managers as well. But we think this is a good technology tool that can help us, again, to do more matchmaking when it comes to ensuring that people are connected to the right opportunities for them that ensures greater longevity within that company after they first get that opportunity. So these are just things, again, I wanted to let you know was kind of since the last board meeting, wanted to provide a few updates on some of these initiatives. Any questions about anything I've shared today?
Greg, this is Lee. I don't want to use up the time of the board today, but you and I know the range of energy and effort going into this thing called Access Point. And I need to elevate this as a formal program in some way, at least knowledge of this board and the organization and the work that's going on there. I want to create some kind of a mechanism, and maybe it's a separate summary document gets created. As you may have seen, we succeeded with the help of Senators Carla May and Brian Williams to put a major amount of money into HB 3003, which is coming back down through the higher education agency, because we purposely connected this with the college credit infrastructure and doing this inside the public school system. So that money, right now it's at $1 million. It was originally put in for 2.1 out of the horse trading. We lost $1 million. However, interestingly enough, MasterCard, Edward Jones, and others who are partners of this literally are calling the governor's office to put the $1 million back in to continue to fund this. It has major opportunity for funding around some of the critical items that we all know are undermining many of our young people to get to both educational opportunities and to a job, one of which is transportation. You've hit on it several times. I'm working with Uber and Lyft and others to try to figure out workarounds to get to the bottom line. Not someday maybe, not bus passes where they sit on a corner for hours, but literally right now, new contracts with these organizations, which the big problem is that I'm working with 17-year-olds, not 18-year-olds. And so I'm partnering with MasterCard and others to try to figure this out. They have a major problem if they're going to attract particularly youth of color to come out to Winghaven if they don't crack the transportation nut. And as you well know, Greg, that's the tip of the iceberg of issues here. But I'm cutting deals with rethinking how we do case management. I've just got off the phone with an agreement we have with Brown School and how they're going to reform their internship for credit program. You and I both know we're trying to get to some of our Wioa vendors so that some of this money can be used in conjunction with accessing those resources. And the reality of this program is it's not a 501c3. It's a conglomeration of industry leaders who need jobs filled. And so when people tell me, well, where do I give the money? I don't have a place to give the money. That's why I'm putting it through the higher ed institution, partnered initially with St. Louis Community College, and working through how they manage things. And they've got a foundation. So corporations that are putting money in the hat are giving it to their foundation. Fence for Access Point. Government money is coming into this. My biggest issue is finding and supporting those kids. And so the issue is not enough of them understand the value prop in the growth of the IT industry. So we're literally rewiring what's happening in the 8th grade, 9th grade process. Several of these schools have already rewired their entire freshman orientation to include Access Point and the pipeline to getting a good job if they just do the educational steps that are already in place in the public school system. The kids are just not doing them. But they got hurdles, all kinds of hurdles, life and educational hurdles. And that's where your Wioa organizations and everybody else in the nonprofit world that's got resources, both inside the high schools and in the college and in United Way and others, there's a real unifying component, is what I guess I'm suggesting, that I'm asking this Workforce Development Center infrastructure work with me maybe even more deliberately to figure out how this fits, which I believe it does in almost every category of what we're doing. Engaging with Penny Pennington and her energy around Anchor Action Network is really a piece of this. And she's now challenging her own organization. Where are you giving money and what impact is it having? They just gave another $200,000 to St. Louis Community College. For what? To do what? What are the metrics? And so there's a continual alignment of what are we doing and how is it impacting? I believe this organization and this board ought to go to school in what we're doing, and it might help us take a leadership role, quite frankly, is what you alluded to, in connecting with some of these other boards and organizations, and trying to bring some continuity and more effectiveness out of the wonderful world of efforts going on. When I talked to Val Patton, my last comment last week, she said one of the problems we've got as a community is that we have the largest number of nonprofits almost in any city in the country. Well over 4,000 nonprofits. Everybody wants to do something and then doesn't like what's going on, so creates its own little version of something. And it's continuing to stress our system to focus. And so some of these big initiatives are helping that. Others, quite frankly, are not. There are a lot of committees. Tech STL, and I'll call a bunch of them out. They've got well-intentioned efforts, but they're diffusing. I'm being asked to give money to a whole bunch of different things, my company is, and be sitting on committees. I'm tired of sitting on committees. We don't need any more committees. And this entity can take an even broader, more deliberate leadership role, I believe, than it is already. And my apologies, Jason, for not getting my one-on-one with you, but I'm sharing with the whole team what I would have shared with you in our one-on-one, and I'll shut up.
Thank you, Lee, and well, it's good to hear that that actually happened. I hadn't touched base with you on the outcome of the budget discussions, but I know that was something that was being that was being pushed forward, and so glad to hear that there's additional funding, and there are ways that we can support, and so would recommend the board do look at how we contribute resources to helping this initiative Access Point, which is addressing another talent shortage. Obviously, that's a great need in our region, as it is in many regions, and a shortage that the pandemic has again further emphasized the need for skilled workers with technology skills, right? And they're getting some very robust skill development through this program and in an accelerated way, and know that Lee, you and your team are working hard to get rid of the barriers that would get in young people's way of being able to pursue paths in this area. So certainly, Jason and I will get that time with you to Lee, and then we'll disseminate information about Access Point to the board as a follow-up. Maybe, I know you have some documents that we could share just to give a little more information on some of the skills folks are coming away with that the board can be aware of, and then really look at how do we leverage Wioa funding to support the needs that some of the that number of the participants might have who are going through the initiative. So thanks for those comments. Yep. And I think it's important, again, to leverage what's working right in the region. And so as we look to do our work, we're an intermediary in a lot of ways in the workforce space, and we know what's going on with partners and training providers and the needs of employers. So rather than create new initiatives, it's really important that we look at how we leverage what's effectively working, right? And making sure that we see how we can support that. So that's just a general point, building off of what you shared as well, Lee.
Great.
All right, so if there's no more questions or any thoughts or updates from members to share related to these initiatives, we can move to our Fsis report, if that works for you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, let's please do.
Okay, let me stop sharing for a moment so that I can share our fiscal reports. Okay, is Ann Agnew on the call with us? Or Chris Horn maybe? Just wanted to see if either one of them are on the call.
Chris Horn is here.
And
Hi,
is
Chris.
also here.
You said Ann is here?
Yes, I am. I'm sorry. I
Okay.
forgot to unmute.
It's okay, Ann. It's okay. Well, I want to first introduce you to our board. The last few meetings we've had, I think you've had different, the board has seen different presenters. We had, I think Marva McJoy, who you all know well, who served as the interim fiscal director for a number of years, but was very specific to workforce for a number of years prior to that role. And she retired in, I think it was early April 1st, and it wasn't an April Fool's joke. I thought it was at first, but it wasn't, as she decided to retire from St. Louis County. And then we had a new fiscal director in place, Victoria Reed, who now has moved over to a neighboring department within St. Louis County. So now Ann Agnew is a very talented member of our team, member of the Department of Human Services, who has been working with St. Louis County's Workforce Development Board for quite a while. So Ann's not new to workforce development or to the Department of Human Services. I'll let Ann, you say a few words before we go into your report about yourself, but really excited to work with Ann, and she's highly collaborative and supportive of our work. And we're working to make sure that we look at processes that will help our board improve its ability to deliver services and make sure that whatever information we provide to the board, especially related to our fiscal matters, is the best way that we can present it and make sure that you all have the information you need to guide us in making the most important decisions. So Ann has already told me that that's something that she wants to work with me on, and I agree. I think the board will benefit from it. So without further ado, let me introduce Ann real quick. And Ann, if you could just say a few words about yourself, and then we'll go into the report.
Good morning, Mr. LaPosa, and thank you for the nice introduction. I really appreciate it. I've been with St. Louis County since February of 1994, 12 and a half years with the Parks Department, and then I've been with this department since October of 2006. And up until January of 2021, about 40% of my work in this department has been lower level work for workforce development grants, reviewing invoices submitted by the agencies primarily for financial and mathematical correctness, but also sometimes for other miscellaneous items. And I've been asked by Marva and other managers for workforce development grants to help them with their general journal and budget entries and setup of grants in our accounting system and cleaning them out afterwards and so on. Reporting and dealing with auditors is the new side for me. And these are the numbers of our formula grants for the PY20 and PY21 awards. The adult, I can update slightly. There was only $3,600 and a few dollars left, and we have already coded that to an invoice. So that is technically 100% now. For the others, basically we need to do some moving so that we can do some final expenditures, but we will have the PY20 money spent by June 30th. And PY21, we started costing some items to that as the PY20 monies have been used up, or we were waiting for budget transfer in order to pay something. So to get it paid, we started paying out of PY21. Any questions so far?
I'll just add that, again, double down on what Ann said about, or emphasize that Ann said that we will meet our obligations and full expenditures by June 30th of 2022 for our PY20 funds. And then you see that, if you add up the total expenditures compared to budget for PY21, I think we're at about 17%, probably around there for expenditures, and we have until about we have until June of 2023 to spend that. So again, that's another year from now. We've been looking at ways to accelerate our spending, especially around dislocated worker. Continue to have that discussion internally to make sure that we're looking at new opportunities for programs that help us to spend down the funds that we do have. And so again, these are, when we say expenditures, I should say, this includes, a lot of the direct participant spending that we need to do, right? So it's the cost of tuition, or it's the cost of work experience for our youth or for our adults. And these are the types of programs where we really need to increase the spending that we have. We make allocations to our subrecipients, mostly for staff, salaries and fringes, but it's the enrollments and programs and the expenditures on direct participants that will help us to drive the remaining expenditures that we need. So working with our partners and looking at, again, like Lee presented, ways to partner with other organizations to get more resources out in the community and best leverage Wioa funds is something that we need to continue to look at and make sure that we're building strategy around, and especially, again, that dislocated worker population. So we need to work on that more, but we still expect, as we have in the past, we meet our obligations in terms of expenditures by the deadline that we have, and meet all of our obligations. You want to go into the next report, Ian? Let me scroll down on the screen so you can put it up. Okay, it's up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Laposa. We have used up our skill up TANF, and we are well on the way for these other monies. The one item that is of concern to me is the COVID money, but I know that on our HUD grants, which is what I primarily work with since January 2021, the federal government has granted an extension for using up those monies.
Yes, and to that point about the COVID grant, we've had in last meetings, we always talk about the COVID grant because it has been a more challenging grant, primarily because of some of the restrictions related to eligibility for dislocated worker, as well as some of we haven't seen as many participants express interest in doing temporary employment work, and just generally recruitment for that program, hasn't been what it needs to be. And so I think that, as we move forward, there is an opportunity for an extension for us to take advantage of with the state of Missouri. I've been trying to get some time with our grant officer at the state of Missouri to make sure that I fully understand all the requirements or obligations of that extension. But it is likely that we will take that extension, and we've gotten some good feedback from our dislocated worker program provider, FWCA, and their team on how we could modify the budget a little bit that will help us to spend down those funds. We've been working to think through strategies on our end as well, and we have been seeing in the last couple months more and more individuals who are interested in that temporary employment opportunity that we are placing. So we think that now towards the end of the grant, we're starting to see more individuals expressing interest, and we hope that that bodes well for us to be able to continue to spend down that grant, which will likely be extended through 2023, the June of 2023. So,
May I toss out a suggestion?
Yes.
One of the existing agencies in workforce development, Employment Connection, has about 300,000 remaining of prevention money for housing assistance for clients due to COVID. And I was wondering if you could have their team that works with you refer clients from their housing program to your COVID workforce program.
That's a great suggestion to look at how we're leveraging what's going on in a different division within the Department of Human Services to get referrals to the program. I think that is something that we can pursue. And so thank you for that suggestion. Absolutely.
You're welcome.
Greg, this is Howard. I just
Yes,
want to
Howard.
be sure. Am I reading the dates for the start and end date for the equal opportunity officer, correct?
And could you clarify that? It says July 1st, 2022 as the
Oh,
start
I'm
date.
sorry, that's a typo of Mr. Horn. It should be 7/1/2021.
No, there's always an opportunity for just minor corrections. However, I want to make sure that we give the best and most accurate information to the board.
Yep,
Thank you
absolutely.
very much for your wisdom.
Thank you, Howard. And thank you, Ann, for making that correction. So Ann, we feel confident that we'll spend the money in the EO officer, as well as I'm looking down at the PY21 Jobs League program as well in the month of June. I know that a lot of times the Jobs League actually is more active in the earlier part of the summer, but want to make sure that we flag, if you have any thoughts on that. If you don't, then that's fine too. I just wanted to make sure
The Jobs League traditionally is primarily busy June through early August. And I'm not sure about that end date myself, but we'll have to take a closer look at that.
Greg, this is Carolyn. I think I can help with that.
Sure.
We paused the Jobs League because your staff was reviewing the expenditures, and we were given the okay to continue last month. And so we are confident that we will spend all of the dollars for the Jobs League.
Great. Thank you, Carolyn. Okay, any questions from board members on our fiscal report? All right, well, thank you, Ann, for your time, and thank you, Carolyn and Howard, for your assists with walking through the report. We'll keep you updated. And again, Ann and I are going to work closely to look at how to make these reports more accessible, and also make sure that we give you all the information that you need as board members moving forward. So open to recommendations or suggestions too from board members as we work through that process. And of course, also our subrecipients that we work with, you know, to get the money into the contracts that then get expended as well on those processes. So with if there's no other comments on the fiscal report, we'll move over to workforce development reports, if that works for you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, please do.
So we don't have to go through the long, we have about a half an hour left, and there's a lot to the reports that fall underneath the workforce development reports. You can see them in your board packet. There's a business services report. I believe there's a EO update, and there's some documentation for the compliance report, as well as the contracts report from Loris Williams. I do want to focus on a specific area, and that is on our performance. It's something that it's another outside of our fiscal matters that's really important for our board to consider. And these are, you know, looking at our DOL negotiated rates. Every year we have to negotiate with the Department of Labor on meeting certain objectives related to credential attainment, earnings, employment outcomes. And so Dr. Manning is going to help us review our latest Mo Performs report there. And the sub-state monitoring report is in the board packet, but if you want to touch on anything related to that, that was conducted back in January, Dr. Manning. But if you had any thoughts to share there that are at high level, feel free to do that. But otherwise, I'm going to move over to your document that you'll need for this presentation.
Thank you, Greg. Yep, there we are. Okay, good morning again, everyone. And so in respects to time, what I do want to do, as Director Laposa alluded to, below this document, you'll see your sub-state monitoring report to the board. And that was delivered in January of 24. So what I'm going to do, the board report that was issued in January highlights our performance outcomes as of January, which is that end of the second quarter of the program year. The document we're looking at now was performance outcomes as of May, which is mid Q4. So what I'm going to do is a contrast and comparison as to where we were then and where we are now. So in January, we were struggling, our youth programming was struggling in the area of credential and skills gains. Now, again, guys, the document that I'm reading from you have, but it's below this document, and we didn't do a split screen. So forgive us for that, but you do have the document, and I'm simply holding the document that's below this one and doing a compare and contrast. Okay. So again, in January, our youth programming was struggling in the area of credential and skills gains. In credentials, we were at 52.68%. In skills gains, we were at 14.25% in January. As of May, our credentials for youth, we are at 103.33%. For skills gains, we are at 95.53%. We have reached our negotiated rate with the state, and we have walked over into that challenge area that Dr. Leathers challenges the regions to go above and beyond and exceed expectations, with which comes certain, what do I want to call it, Greg? Comes
Incentives and additional funding potentially.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Greg. So again, we've reached our negotiated rate for our youth. And guys, these are some serious trajectories. We went from 52% to 103%, from 14% to 95%. And that's a great deal. And I am absolutely pleased with that. For dislocated worker, I want to highlight that for dislocated worker for employment in Q2, for employment in Q2 for dislocated worker, in January, we were at 72.16%. We are now at 85.2%. Now, in order to reach our negotiated rate with the state of Missouri, we have to get at least 90%. And that's why you see that 85% is still in red. I am totally confident that by June 30th, we will reach this goal as we continue to employ our individuals who graduate and successfully complete our training programs. Again, in January, we were at 72%. We are now at 85%. Totally confident by June 30th that negotiated rate will be reached. In all other areas, performance has been achieved. And again, when you see that green, guys, that means we have exceeded expectations. The yellow means we've reached our negotiated rate. Okay. As we go down to adult, I want to bring attention to the credential, which is about the same as we were in January. Not only is it about the same, we were at 89% in January. We are at 88% now. So what this means is that when more people enter training than have successfully completed training, this is where we can get that lapse and where we can go backwards. But the good news is we went from 89.10% in January to 88.14%, which means as our adults and our dislocated workers continue to successfully complete our training programs, this number will continue to increase. Again, totally confident that we will reach our negotiated rate by June 30. Again, we must reach 90% in order for it to be successful in the eyes of the state of Missouri. Wagner-Pizer, for Wagner-Pizer, we have two areas that are in red. I want to give a little background so you guys can remember what Wagner-Pizer is. Wagner-Pizer are not WIOA funded programs. Wagner-Pizer are those services that every individual that comes into a St. Louis or an American Job Center has to register for. Anyone who walks through our doors has to do a basic Wagner-Pizer registration. These are usually self-service type deals, job searching, creating resumes, and things of that nature. We have no control over these particular numbers. These are numbers that are put in by our clients and the individuals. However, they are still tracked. So for employment in Q2 for Wagner-Pizer, we were at 74.96% in January. We are now at 77.09. In January for Q4 for Wagner-Pizer, we were at 89.10%. We are now at 89.36%. So as you can see, those numbers, while they've increased, they have not increased by that much. I'm confident that as individuals continue to come into the center and take advantage of our self-service items and things like that, that we will reach that 90% rate in Q4. I'm hoping for that rate in Q2. Can't promise that. Again, this is individuals that voluntarily come into the Center for Self-Service and things like that. These are not WIOA paid programming services. So with that being said,
This is Lee Metcalf. Could you give me just a second more on that one? Give me an example of the kind of services they might acquire when they register for this.
Oh, absolutely. So, Mr. Metcalf, what we do have in regards to self-services, they can come in, they can do they can use. So Director Laposa just alluded to it when he spoke about the fact that, 15% of the people in the St. Louis County region don't have access to internet and things like that. So self-service, what they can do is come in, use our computers. They can do those job searches. They can apply for those positions. We have a room set up where they can even do their online interviews in a private office. We even have a private office for online interviews for people who walk into the center, who need to use the center for their online interviews. Things like that, resume work, come to update their resumes, attend job fairs. You have to register with Wagner-Pizer when you come through our doors. So all of those particular things are what are considered self-service.
Thank you.
So when I say self-service, there's still staff available to assist them with the basics, but it's not a one-on-one thing where they're being assessed for core services, where we have to take into account their family size, income, and where we'll be dispensing funds or dispersing funds to the individual. Wagner-Pizer are basic job center services.
That's very helpful. Thank you. All right. We're working now, back to Access Point for 2 seconds. We're working with now over 100 families, most of them in North County. And people just are not aware of these services. And I'm trying to figure out whether I can be a better marketing device, given the staff that I have that are out there combing the countryside for these young folks that are initially still in high school, but then they get out of high school and they're technically, I guess, adults at that point. So I'm trying to understand the seams we have between the youth program, the adult program, the Wagner-Pizer program, and maybe you and I can talk more, or I can talk with some of the staff, Greg, to better understand that and get my hypercare director more deeply involved, because we may be able to push more people to you if I just got my act together.
Oh, absolutely, Mr. Metcalf, and I totally agree and would love to do that. One thing to remember is that Wagner-Pizer is simply that basic service. It gets them in our door, and we're able to assess them to move them to that core level when necessary, if that makes sense. So that Wagner-Pizer is just a basic registration that every individual who walks through our door will complete.
Sure.
Absolutely. And so those individuals that complete that registration, some choose to stay with, they only need that basic help, that little assistance. They don't need much staff assistance.
Sure.
And they're not interested in WIOA services or may not have a need for them.
Sure.
What I do find oftentimes, the individuals that we can grab from the Wagner Pizer pool that choose not to go into those core services is we can, not everyone is unemployed. Oftentimes, and what we're seeing a lot now is they're underemployed. And so, if we could, I feel that there's a disconnect there. How do we reach our underemployed individuals as well as our unemployed? We focus a lot of time on the unemployed, but the underemployed is very significant at this time.
Agreed.
So with that, I would love to talk more about how we can upgrade these services and what you're doing so we can get this out. Another thing I want to add, and I know it's 9:12. So another thing I want to add is that you mentioned marketing. We're not allowed to use WIO funds for marketing. So we have to use more innovative ways to get the word out. Historically, I say up until maybe 5 to 7 years ago, the job center was known as the unemployment office. People would come in, hey, is this the unemployment office? We're like, no, it's the job center. But so just changing the face of that and helping individuals to understand that the job centers are way more than an unemployment office, and that we do have these plethora of services to offer has always been a challenge. And I look forward to, finding ways where we can get the word out and paint a clear picture of what we actually do. It would really help.
Let's talk. I think I could be one of those innovative ways to get more information out there to the people you're trying to reach. While I've interrupted you, one more question back on youth. Is it possible for you or somebody to give me literally a name by name breakdown to better understand who's in that, what's driving the percentages, how many people is this, and what's the nature of what we're doing for them? That would be hugely helpful to me to better understand how I might be able to not only just
Absolutely. Absolutely. So just so I'm clear, Mr. Metcalf, you want to break down the youth that we are engaging, what services they're being given.
Yes.
What service being given, and is there anything else, any demographics, or are you particularly interested in those services being driven, or is there anything else you like to incorporate in that?
Well, you hit the two, services and demographics. Whatever demographics goes, is it 10? Is it 50? Is it 200 people that are in this number driving this percentage, and where our funds going, and just literally understand the services they're getting.
Okay, absolutely. Well, I can say that as of right now, and with both our youth providers combined, that particular number that we're looking at, we're at about 125 for both programs. Our goal is 250.
Okay.
So we got off to kind of a slow start at the beginning of the year, and as you can see from our January performance outcomes, but as youth got more engaged, and I think with the pandemic turning around and us being released back out into the outdoors and everything, we've seen a drastic uptick, which is awesome, and we plan to continue to go in that way. But I will definitely get you this information. Absolutely.
I'll give the meeting back.
Lee, this is Carolyn. Do you want, because I know your program is specifically focused on in-school youth, and our performance is in school and out of school. You want both? Is that what you're asking, or just specifically in school?
Anybody that's in that youth program is what I'm trying to understand, regardless of access point. But yes, access point is driving kids who start in high school, they're in school, then they graduate. So now I've got them in higher ed and outside that. So I've got both, straddling both worlds with this particular program. But I just want to understand in more detail, literally, how our own numbers are being driven with more clarity than I have now.
And Dr. Manning, I think it would be good as well if some kind of narrative could be given to Lee to really show how the vendors are supporting the youth above and beyond the supportive services and everything that are given. So he can get a really good picture of the barriers and what it really takes to minimize or eliminate those barriers.
I think as a board, we really need to understand these things. It's one thing to see the numbers, and I'll just hold myself up as an example. I see the numbers, I read them. I like what we're seeing, where we've got red lines. All right, you guys are paying attention to some things, you're trying to move it. I believe we need to understand the mechanics just a little better. Exactly how many people are we touching? What could we be doing to help you get more? And in all of the different, that's what your board's for. We've all got connections to all kinds of things that we might be able to figure out how to help some of these move faster just by connecting some dots. Probably some other things more substantive than that, but just that with the kind of brain power you've got on this board.
Well, that and Lee, as well as the ability for the youth in school and out of school to qualify for the Wioa funds. So
yeah, well, I'm in the middle of that right now with Greg, trying to see how many of the 100 kids we've got in this access point pipeline qualify and what it takes to qualify. And part of it, I'm working through a pretty bad cold, so pardon my efforts here, but part of it has to do with us also being very sensitive to personal information that these families have that are part of Access Point and trying not to wrap them up in a lot of government mishmash, red tape, and then they feel, awkward about it. But we do have that information, and we know we're on food stamps and on lunch programs, and Greg's coaching us on what are those terms and conditions, and then, how fast can I move them into that or some other like program? If nothing else, just, I won't use the word marketing, but marketing what you do to the hundreds of families that, at least in this one program I'm touching, but I touch others. And Jeff Mazur probably could be doing the same thing with people that he interacts with out of Launch Code. That's all. I'm just saying it might be able to help you more if we saw a little bit more detail.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Lee, for that. And I think that is exactly what we heard from a lot of the other board members as Jason was doing his listening sessions, was just the need to have more visibility in how these program services are being provided by our service providers, as well as more in-depth knowledge about these elements of WIOA, right? So we do have more education and more information sharing to do there, and we're going to make it after this board meeting a priority to go in more in the weeds on some of those program elements. So I know Dr. Manning's on the information gathering, Carolyn, obviously working with you and our other subrecipient Employment Connection on getting information that could be helpful, I think, to you, Lee, as a board member, but flagging this general conversation as well. And so thank you for that. There's only a couple more items remaining on the agenda, and we have about 10 minutes, and I think we can accomplish that, Mr. Chair. If I can move to old business, if that works for you.
Yes, please do.
Okay, great. So we've already approved the bylaws, so that item on old business has been effectively taken care of. There's no new updates there. Thank you again for the vote. The only other thing that we wanted to share under old business was, I'm actually trying to stop share this screen for a second. The only other thing was to go back to looking at our committees. One of the things that we heard from our board listening session was and I know, Lee, you said you don't want to do any more committees. We're going to probably still ask you to maybe serve on one of these, but understand that you all have limited time, but we really want some of the work to
functional committee.
Right. Well, we'll make it fun. We'll make them functional. Yes. But making sure that we actually get our committees fully activated again. And between now and the next meeting, in addition to filling board vacancies and looking at some officer vacancies, we really want to do some outreach to members that we think will be good fits for some of these committees. So we want you to be thinking about it, but we'll also be reaching out and inviting your participation. And you can always tell us no, but we'll be passionately advocating for a number of you to be helping us to, one, get some of these committees off the ground. The Employer Engagement Career Pathways Committee hasn't met in a while, and again, we've repurposed that committee, and needs to be private sector members that are part of that. And then our youth committee, we've recently had a transition of one of our board members, Kashana Armstrong, who used to chair that committee. So we need a new chair for that committee, and we need to look at filling out that membership as well. And I know that Angela Irby's been working closely with Lydia Mitchell, our board member and chair of our Disability Resource Committee, to look at resuming a regular scheduled meeting of that committee as well. What the purpose of each committee is listed here in a very brief form, but in your bylaws, if you just turn to your bylaws, you can get even more information on what these various committees are. The nominating committee is a committee that we only form to elect officers according to our bylaws. And so that committee is kind of a as needed committee. It's not a standing committee necessarily. And we already have members that are part of that committee who help to review our candidates for our board chair. And so we'll probably ask them to help us with filling some vacancies and officers by our next board meeting. We'll reach back out to that same group and invite them to continue that work. But otherwise, if anyone else is interested in serving on the nominating committee, happy to have that. But that's really the only update there, just to provide that information about the committees, and again, let you know that we'll be reaching out. So if there's no points or questions on the committees, let me ask first, any questions or comments on the committees? Okay, well then we can move to new business, Mr. Chair, and look at nominating officers, which is tied to that nominating committee piece.
Yeah, please do, and share that slide as well.
Yep. Yeah, we can share, right. We can share the whole slide. Yep. Or slide deck today. So we have 3 vacancies on our executive committee. Jason's transition to chair has created a vacancy for our vice chair. I think Jason, previously you were, I'm sorry, you were the treasurer technically.
Treasurer.
Yeah,
Right.
John Frederick was our vice chair, and then he became our chair. So we need to fill a vice chair role that has to be a business representative. They assume the duties in the board chair's absence. If our board chair can't attend a meeting, for instance, the vice chair becomes the presiding officer. Our treasurer, we want to empower the treasurer to be more of an effective collaborator with our director, me, and our fiscal unit, to make sure that we're presenting the information again that the board needs from a financial standpoint that helps us to make the most actionable decisions. So there will be a more hands-on role there for anyone who's interested in serving in that role. And then a parliamentarian, we don't have a parliamentarian currently, but we know that there are times when we might need to consult someone who has working knowledge of Robert's Rules of Order, who could assist us in making sure that we have procedurally everything covered in the event that we have a question. So this is a role that hasn't been filled for a little while that we also need to make sure that we fill as we look into this new program year. So I'm not asking you right now, members, to raise your hand for any of these roles, but what I am going to say is there's a process that I've outlined that, again, we'll share with you all, that asks you to consider these roles, consider putting your name in the hat for these roles, or alternatively nominating someone who you think might be a good fit for a vice chair or treasurer or a parliamentarian, and submit those to Loris. And we're giving you kind of a timeline here for how this can work. But our goal is to get to, by the time we get to our next board meeting, to say that we're starting off our next program year with that executive finance committee fully staffed, and the officers of the board elected. So similar to how we conducted the elections for our board chair, we would ask members to elect in advance of the meeting by looking at a slate of candidates potentially, and then voting, and then we would reveal the results at the August meeting. So again, this is more for you to think about right now, and we will follow up with email communication to invite your engagement as a potential officer, or to, again, nominate one of your colleagues to serve in that role as well. And then again, we'll ask the nominating committee members who help to elect or recommend to our board the candidates for our board chair to resume their responsibilities if they're willing to continue serving, just to maybe participate in a meeting or two to make sure that we have good candidates that we can recommend to the board for full approval. And that's all I have to report on that. Are there any questions related to nominating officers? If not, the bylaws, again, I think we've covered the new business there. It was the vote, and then conflict of interest attestations. Loris, if you can just give us a quick minute overview of that. It's in your board packet, but Loris is going to just explain that real quick, and then we can look at a motion to adjourn. But Loris, go ahead.
So, as you all that have been on the board for a while are aware, every year we have to have the board sign two attestations. One is with the bylaws and the other is the conflict of interest. Since we did not have the bylaws done at our February meeting, we did not have the attestation signed, but now that we have ratified our bylaws, it is time to get those documents signed. So I did include the conflict of interest statement in the board packet, and there are the attestation pages in there just for your review. I will be sending those pages out to all of our board members within the coming week. So please, when you get those, if you could sign them and send them back to me so that we will have those on file when they are requested, because we get asked for them every year during our audits. And so we need to get those on file. So I will send those out within the coming week, just the attestation pages. I don't think I need to send, unless somebody wants me to, the conflict of interest statement and the bylaws, since they are included in the packet. I'll just send the attestation pages. Please get them signed as quickly as possible and back to me. Any questions on that?
No, I don't have a question on that. This is Carolyn. I just wanted to double check, since the contracts end June 30th. Greg, how should we proceed?
Yep. So Carolyn, we don't technically have our budget for any contracts for the next PY year yet. That is something that we would like to probably convene the board as a special session if necessary, or our executive committee to review those in the month of June. But once we receive our allocations and actually have a budget for the next program year, we'll be able to look at that. But we'll likely need to have a special session. And I meant to say that earlier in my report. So thank you, Carolyn, for asking the question.
Thank you.
Yep. Well, I want to thank all the members of the workforce development staff. You heard a number of them today on the call, and all the hard work they're doing. And thank Howard and the DHS team for your support. Of course, Jason, for your leadership of this board, and members for your engagement. And I'll turn it back over to you, Jason, to say any final thoughts and to invite a motion to adjourn.
Well, I'll ask, is there any final thoughts from anyone on the board? If there are no other comments, a motion to adjourn is in order.
Make a motion to adjourn, Lee Metcalf.
I second
Senior.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you all for your time and your service
Thanks, Jason.
very much.
Thank you.
Jason, thanks all.
Thanks, everyone. Have a nice day. Be safe.
Thank you.